Hello, tubers and tubettes. My name is Dave Dixon. I live in Northern California, and I wanted to talk a little bit about a house that I built. So ever since I was a young kid, I always wanted to build my own house, from scratch. And so when I was 33, I was able to do that. I ended up buying a lot. I ended up getting some plans. We modified the plans the way that my wife kind of liked. And then I ended up building this house from scratch. It was a 2,800 square foot house in Stockton. And it came out really nice. But I remember some of the beginning parts of it was when I bid it out initially, because I had subcontractors doing a lot of the work for me. But anything I could do, I would try to do it. So when I first bid it out, they asked me, well, how do you want us to bid it? We can bid it with the highest stuff, we can bid it mid-range, you can bid it lowest. And so my initial reaction was to say, I want to build this house as cheap as possible. And so I just thought that's the best way to negotiate, start out like that. And I got some really cheap prices. And it was kind of shocking. It was way under my budget to build the house. But then I had a guy who was an air conditioning guy, and he goes, you want to bid it as cheap as possible? And I say, yes, I do. And he goes, oh, okay, I would do that. He goes, I'll do whatever you want. He goes, but I would not recommend that. I go, really? He goes, well, I could have one air conditioning compressor that works on the top floors and also on the bottom floors, and you'd be running it all the time because you're either downstairs or you're upstairs in the evening when you go to sleep. He goes, I would recommend, if it was my house, I would put 2 AC compressors on it, one downstairs and one upstairs. And I was like, well, why would I get 2 of them? He goes, because during the day you can leave the one upstairs off. If there's nobody up there, there's no reason to air condition or even heat it in the wintertime. And you can have your heater on down in the bottom story, because where your stairways are, the heat would eventually go up into that area and heat it that way. But then when you're done with your watching television, having dinner, hanging out, everything you do, then you can shut the bottom air conditioning system off, and then you can turn on the upper air conditioning system. And it really made me, stop to think, well, that does make a lot of sense. And so I said, okay, well, that sounds good. So he did come back with another bid showing 2 air compressors, and yes, it was more expensive. I'm going to say like $1,000 more at the time, but I could really see the cost savings, by having it done that way. Another thing he suggested is, instead of having the AC units, the compressors on the west side, where that's where they were supposed to go, he goes, if I were you, I would put them on the east side. And part of me thought he's just trying to make more money off me, because the lines have to be ran a lot longer. And I said, well, why would I put them on the east side? He goes, the most energy you're going to use, for the compressors is going to be for air conditioning. And if you have them on the west side, they're going to be hot from 12 o'clock noon to like, say, 4 or 5, the hottest part of the day. That sun will just be beaming on those compressors, and they're not going to work as efficient as if they were on the east side, where it gets the morning sun, or from 12 o'clock on, there's no sun on it at all. Again, that made sense to me, so I was like, yeah, okay, let's figure it on the east side. He goes, it's going to be a little bit more. And I remember at the time, it was like maybe $400 more to run them to that side. And it was just super energy efficient when I actually lived in the house. I lived there for 13 years. So all of this learning that I got from the HVAC guy made me think, I'm going to rebid this whole house out again. And I did. And when the guys came back to do the next bid, they said, well, how do you want to bid this thing? I said, I want you to bid it as if it was your house. And I knew the price would be higher but I'd want them to justify it, what they were doing. And the guys just went to it. And I was really surprised that the cost was not that much more, but the quality was way more. I remember when I got involved with the roofer, we were going to put wood board down that is, compressed wood, CDX I think they call it, and it's wafer board. One of the problems with wafer board is if it gets wet, like say it has a big storm before you cover it, sometimes that wood can start to expand and it would damage your roof because it's the underlayment for your shingles. So I said, well, especially on that, I would like to have plywood instead, and I would like it to be waterproof plywood, so it's actually treated. And I remember the guy telling me, oh my God, he goes, that is going to be a fortune. I go, really? You think so? He goes, oh yeah, that's expensive. Plywood, and you want it waterproof, like you would do a shower or something? He goes, yeah, that's going to be expensive. I said, well, go ahead and bid it for me. I want to find out how much it's going to be. So when he gave me the bid, he said, are you ready for this? And I said, yep. He goes, you're talking about another $1,100. And I thought, I'm paying $14,000 for my roof already, and this is going to be another $1,100. I mean, that didn't seem like a fortune to me. And so it really did have me push to use these guys' knowledge to say that I want you to bid it out as if it was your house, your home. What would you do? And all through the construction of it, I had a lot of good ideas that came in. Now, at one point, I decided to do my own concrete. I mean, I had never done a foundation before, but the details were pretty easy to read. And so I went about getting some brand new wood, Douglas fir, 2x12, and steel stakes, and I laid this thing out, and I have to admit it was beautiful. I mean, with the brand new wood on there, because normally cement guys are using the boards over and over, and with how my footing was really cleaned out and the edges were really cornered in and the steel rebar was hanging just right, I was really kind of proud of myself. And so I had a friend of mine, he's actually no longer living now, but he had brain cancer, but a really good friend, Steve Sipodinsky, and he was a concrete guy, and so I wanted him to come over and take a look at it, and I agreed to pay him $100, and a case of beer to take a look at my foundation. And when he saw it, he was like, whoa, he goes, that looks really, really good. Because the wood was brand new, pretty high quality, never been used before, and everything looked very, very straight. So I said, well, if you could check it out for me, I would appreciate it. So he did, and he goes, Dave, he goes, you did a hell of a job. He goes, these footings are right where they're supposed to be, 10 inches into virgin soil, and my stem wall was right. I had the right amount of rebar in there. The bends were really good. He goes, the only problem with it is your foundation is 2 inches out of square. And I was like, what? How can that possibly happen? And what it is when your foundation is square like this, that's what you want. But when it's out of square, it's like this. So you have, the two corners go out by just an inch. It's almost hard to tell because you've got to pull the tape, really, really taut on it to tell. So I remember I was like, oh my God, because I almost poured that thing. I wasn't going to have them come out there, but I was almost going to pour it. So I had to go back to the drawing board, and Steve actually came out with another guy, on the next day, and he straightened it out for me for $300, $100 for the other guy, $200 for him. I mean, they worked on it all day. It's amazing how much they had to do to straighten it out. And he made it perfectly straight. And then I said, I think I'm just going to have you pour it, because I was going to have some other guys pour it. I didn't know how good they were. But this is the cheap part. part of me trying to get a great deal. So I said, well, I'd rather just have you do it. I know it was going to be more expensive, but he found this thing. Had I built it 2 inches out of square, the walls wouldn't have lined up and the roof wouldn't have lined up. It just, the cabinets inside would have been slightly off. So he really saved my bacon on that one by finding out that it was out of square. So then I realized, you know what? I can get these other guys, that do it every day to do it faster, cheaper, and get it done the first time. If there was a problem, I can make them, fix it. Or if I did a lot of it myself, then I would have to pay for it again. I mean, that would have been a nightmare on this particular house. So I learned my lesson on it, and we did end up getting the house put together. I lived in it for 13 years, and then we sold that house when we bought the house that I'm in now. I've been in my house now, I think, going on 20 years. So it was a great experience. I really hated leaving it because I love that house. I knew where I put everything. But we moved from a 2,800 square foot house to a 3,300 square foot house with a 3-car garage, which is what I really needed. And the quality of the build, is really good on my house. So at the time, we needed to move to another school district that was better for my kids, but we also needed the space and a more efficient design. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. One of my milestones, one of the things I really am proud of was being able to build my own house and having your family live in the house that you built. It did mean a lot to me. But luckily we built it with a lot of quality, so I was able to sell it for a good price. Thank you for listening, and I appreciate your time. Bye-bye.